Welcome back to another episode of the Azure Enablement Show. In this episode, we will talk about how you can monitor Azure with the Azure Monitor Baseline Alerts. Welcome back. My name is Thomas, and I'm here with Paul, an Azure Landing Zone Program Manager, and Jan, who is the tech lead for the baseline alerts, to talk about how you can monitor Azure with the Azure Monitor baseline alerts. So first of all, let me say thank you for being here, Paul and Jan. It's an honor to have you on the call today, and I'm looking forward to learn from you. So to get started, Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about Azure Monitor baseline alerts?
Sure, thanks, Thomas, and great to be back. So if we look at Azure today, the question our customers have is, how do we monitor Azure? We validated a gap in our guidance and tooling where we needed to help our customers and partners accelerate their observability journey by providing a baseline set of platform metrics, as well as a framework for delivering consistent and scale based on Azure policy.
Yeah, and for myself, for instance, as a consultant, I engage with many different customers in the monitor journey, where we basically had to start over every single time, as we had no baseline configured and no reference guidance ready to implement either.
Yeah, okay, I agree. That's absolutely true. I mean, monitoring things in any scenario is a difficult task, right? So it's definitely good to have some baselines here. So, Paul, can you tell us a little bit more what the team created here and how you built it?
Sure. So before diving in, I just wanted to point out that the solution we started creating was targeting uptime for the central platform infrastructure resources. So that's kind of the basis of where we built this from. So we started by defining which resources to alert on and what metrics were relevant. We did this by aligning with the infrastructure resources that we deploy as part of the default implementation for Azure Landing Zone. So the metrics were the basis for the baseline alerts we collected from publicly available documentation provided by each of the product groups where available. Now, the challenge that we addressed here was that the recommendations haven't been consolidated into a single documentation format. So there is no central location. So if a customer wants to go and find out information about a specific service, they have to go to that service's product documentation. So we have basically captured that centrally and highlighted where links are possible back to the product group documentation exists. So the theme of these types of alerts and metrics included availability, utilization, and saturation. Also activity logs, service health alerts, and we provide a query log alert as well as a sample. Now, these were designed and aligned to the Azure Landing Zone management group structure. Following on from the detail and the metrics we've compiled into the Azure policies, these policies reside in the policy initiative. So we've effectively grouped common themed policies. So if we've got a connectivity initiative, and they have all the connectivity related alerts within as individual policies, as Jan will touch on. And these are assigned to the corresponding management group. So we've seen them as they are aligned to the management group structure. All of this is detailed in the repo. So not going to go too much into this, but I wanted to show you a really valuable resource here, which is the wiki we have. This basically brings to life the repo. We've got lots of fantastic content in here. We've heard from our customers who've provided some great feedback in the early adoption of this, and we've collated lots of valuable information in here. I just want to call out a couple of things, and I'm going to hand over to Jan. Firstly, these alerts documentation that we have, the alert details, certainly worth a look on there. So if you're starting on your monitor journey, these alerts are all defined in a table for you. We have those links, as we said, to the product group where they verify those alerts. And we have lots of information about thresholds. We also have all the policy initiatives as well, and we have lots of other content as well.
So this is amazing. So I love what we have here. So Jan, can you talk a little bit and show us how that would work in my Azure environment, in my Azure implementation?
That's a great question. And the answer is, of course, it depends on where in your Azure journey you deploy this. If we are talking greenfield implementation, that is, you have no resources deployed yet, it will basically work out of the box on new subscriptions and relevant resources inside the scope of the management group hierarchy that are inside the scope of the policies. For brownfield implementations, any existing subscriptions or relevant resources will have to be remediated. We do provide a script to do this, which is described in our deployment guide for that particular purpose. And the script allows you to remediate all the policies, either in an initiative or individual policies if you so require. And of course, once you've done this, any new resources you create will work the same as with a greenfield implementation. That is, they will be also remediated as and when they're created. So, but let me show you how it works. So you'll notice here, I'll go to my standard is a generic Azure landing zone hierarchy. And also, if you look at the policies, you'll notice I have a policy assigned at the root level. And also, if I drill down a bit further down, I have some other initiatives assigned lower down, right? So now, if I go into the subscription, and I go into a resource group, you'll notice this is just an empty resource group I created for demo purposes. And what I'll be doing now is I'll create a virtual network in here to demonstrate how the policy deployment actually works. So I go and create my virtual network. And I'm just going to create it with more or less default settings. I'm not really too bothered about the settings on the network. It's just for demo purposes, right? The virtual network is created, and you'll notice, I mean, there are no hidden types. There's nothing in that particular resource group. And if I go to alert rules, there are no alert rules configured either. So now we have to wait for policy deployment to take place, and that by default takes 10 minutes. So now it's been 10 minutes, and we've had the policy deployment run. As you can see, there's now a metric alert rule created in the same resource group as the virtual network. There could be more alert rules, but we've gone for just this one on the virtual network. And you'll see the policy deployment here, which is the actual one which was kicked off. And actually, if you look at the timestamp, you'll notice it's kicked off 10 minutes after, almost 10 minutes after we created the resource.
So how do I actually go and now implement this into my Azure environment?
That's a really good question. And actually, to simplify management and future updates, we've actually provided a sample GitHub action workflow, which will deploy the solution in a management group hierarchy aligned to Azure landing zones with minimum customization required. We believe this should be the preferred option, although, I mean, we do also provide the guidance on how to do this in a manual fashion. Mm-hmm. But let me just go through the automated option that we have on our GitHub repo. So as you'll notice, we have the GitHub repo here. And then if we drill down into GitHub and workflows, we have this here sample workflow. And let me just talk you through how that works. So initially here we have the different variables, and obviously you'll want to change that depending on how your management group hierarchy looks like and what kind of region you want this deployed to. Then this is basically just standard GitHub stuff. You will notice we're using OIDC, so you'll need to configure that as well. And we do have guidance on how to do that, links to the guidance on how to do that in the deployment guide that we created. Then the next step here is basically just importing all the policy definitions. And once we've done that, we split to the next one where we are basically just going in and creating all the policy initiatives. And obviously the policy definitions needs to be created before the policy initiatives, because otherwise there will be no policy definitions for the policy initiatives to reference. And then lastly, we assign the different initiatives. We assign initiatives only to the relevant management groups. So that would be then identity for the identity initiative, management for the management initiative, and so on and so forth.
So this is really amazing and super simple actually to do. And I love that we still have all the configurations available to assign it to different management groups and so on. So really, really cool stuff. And I can absolutely see how many of our customers are going to deploy that in the Azure environments. So if I want to learn more about this amazing solution, Paul, where do I go and where do I learn more?
So there's a few things I want to kind of cover. We released a blog 2 or 3 weeks ago. So first thing is go check out that blog that has some links in that will link back to the others I'm going to reference to you now. The repo that I shared on the screen earlier, please go and familiarize yourself with the content within. There is lots and it's growing all the time. We are heavily invested in growing that and taking on board that feedback and tweaks as we go along. As part of that, please go and try it out in your environment. Go and test this. Go and see how it works for you and you as the customer or partner, how that works. Bring that feedback back to us, as I said, and understand. I think a key one here is, Jan's talked about policy here. So whilst we've got baseline monitoring, we've also introduced a policy technology, which may be something that not all customers are familiar with. So there may be some kind of learning that needs to happen there. So go and understand, your organization's ability to leverage policy and how that is done today, and determine how best to deploy. Jan talked about a couple of ways to deploy. We've got the automated pipelines, and we also have some manual steps that you can follow as well. So the third one, give us feedback. Head to the issue section in the repo and post any comments, recommendations you'd like us to consider, because we're happy to give you feedback on whether that's a valid request, or we've heard it before, or we need more evidence. We will happily engage in a conversation with you on that. And if you also want us to have a conversation one-to-one, please post in the repo in those issues and say we'd love to, like to talk to you and we need some help. Please also reach out via that channel as well. And the final thing I want to mention to you as well is that whilst Jan and I are part of the Azure Landing Zone team, the solution we've built that was initially focused around Azure Landing Zone can be used by all customers, even if you don't have an Azure Landing Zone deployment. So I want to make this clear that any Azure customer can take what we've built, we've customized and enhanced the guidance to be able to take you all on that journey so that you can deploy this depending on how your environment is set up.
Oh, this is really fantastic. I love that. How the Azure Landing Zone team is listening to feedback from customers and the communities to make these solutions as good as possible. And obviously, I also love what I just heard, that even if you're not a Azure Landing Zone customer and you're not using Azure Landing Zones, you can still leverage that in your environment. I think that's also very powerful. So with that, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Jan. It was great to talk to you. I learned a lot today. Also, thank you very much for everyone listening. If you want to learn more about the Cloud Adoption Framework, make sure you check out aka.ms/adopt.